Hey there. So picture this. It's a late summer afternoon, and you're stuck in traffic. The line of cars just doesn't move. Your AC's struggling, your coffee's gone cold, and you're calculating how late you're going to be. That feeling of being completely, utterly stuck? Of time stretching out into this unbearable, frustrating crawl. Now multiply that by 1,000. Replace the cars with Ottoman siege cannons. Replace the honking with the screams of the wounded and the constant thunder of gunfire. And replace your mild annoyance with the absolute certainty that you, and everyone with you, are going to die. That's where our story begins today. Not with a grand, sweeping battle, but with a siege. A desperate, bloody, and almost forgotten last stand that changed the map of Europe. Welcome back. I'm Ibnul J. Farabi, and this is Flashpoints, the wars that shaped us. Today, we're traveling to a small, swampy fortress town in what's now Croatia, in the year 1566. This is episode 16, the Siege of Siget, the last stand that saved Vienna. To understand why a tiny fortress mattered, we have to look at the chessboard. On one side, Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, ruler of the Ottoman Empire. At 72 years old, he's a living legend. He's conquered Belgrade, Rhodes, and most of Hungary. His empire stretches from Algeria to the Persian Gulf. But one prize has eluded him: Vienna, the heart of Central Europe. He tried to take it once before, back in 1529, and was turned back by brutal weather and stiff resistance. Now, nearly 4 decades later, he's back. He's assembled one of the largest armies he's ever commanded. Some say over 100,000 strong, with a clear goal: finish the job, to march up the Danube and take Vienna for Islam. Nothing, it seems, can stand in his way. And on the other side, there's Nikola Šubić Zrinski, the Ban, or governor, of Croatia, a seasoned and fiercely proud Hungarian-Croatian nobleman with a handlebar mustache you could probably hang a coat on. He commands a little over 2,000 men. Croatians, Hungarians, a few mercenaries. And his mission is simple and insane: to delay the unstoppable Ottoman advance. His tool? A triple fortified but still small castle called Sigetvar, or Siget for short. It was built on swampy islands, more of a damp nuisance than a strategic marvel. But Zrinski knew its secret. The terrain forced any large army into a bottleneck. They couldn't just sweep past. They had to stop, and they had to fight. So the Ottomans arrive. They surround Siget completely. Suleiman, confident, even offers Zrinski a deal: surrender the fortress, and you can keep your lands and titles. Serve me. It was a more than generous offer. Zrinski's response: he orders his cannons to fire on the Ottoman envoy's tent. The message was clear: we're not here to negotiate. We're here to burn your time. And so, the siege begins. For a month, the tiny garrison holds out. The Ottomans pound the outer walls with massive cannons. They dig trenches. They launch assault after assault. And each time, Zrinski and his men beat them back. They fight from the outer town. Then, when that's overrun and burning, they retreat to the inner town. They fight from there until it, too, is a charred ruin. Then, finally, they pull back to the last redoubt, the central, old castle. By this point, maybe 300 fighting men are left. They're exhausted, starving, living in a cloud of smoke and the stench of death. And Suleiman, he's furious. And he's running out of the one thing he can't afford to waste: campaign season. Every day spent on this muddy puddle is a day closer to autumn, to the rains and cold that would make marching on Vienna impossible. And here's where history takes a strange, personal turn. Suleiman the Magnificent, the most powerful man in the world, dies. He dies in his imperial tent, not from a battle wound, but from illness, right there on the plains before Siget. But his Grand Vizier, Sultan Pasha, makes a fateful decision. He knows that news of the Sultan's death would shatter Ottoman morale and embolden all of Europe. So he covers it up. He has the Sultan's body secretly prepared, and he issues orders in Suleiman's name as if he were still alive. The final, all-out assault on the castle must proceed. It's no longer just about taking a fortress. It's about creating a victory to announce after they reveal the Sultan's death. So on the morning of September 7th, 1566, the final attack comes. The last castle is engulfed in flame from incendiary shells. Zrinski knows this is it. He gathers his remaining men. He doesn't give a speech about survival. He tells them it's time to die well, to charge out into the heart of the enemy and take as many with them as they can. They say he dressed in his finest silk robes and draped a chain of gold around his neck. Then he threw open the gates. What was left of the garrison, a few hundred men, charged out. A blazing human arrow shot straight into the heart of the Ottoman ranks. They fought until they were literally submerged in bodies. Zrinski himself was brought down by 3 musket balls. The siege was over. Not a single defender survived. So, on the face of it, this is a story of total defeat. A fortress annihilated, a defender slain, an Ottoman victory. But history is about consequences, not just headlines. And the consequences of Siget were monumental. That month-long delay was everything. By the time the Ottoman army regrouped, dealt with the succession of Suleiman's son, and was ready to march, the season was too late. The road to Vienna was closed by weather and by newly fortified Habsburg defenses. The campaign was called off. The Ottoman army turned back. Think about that. Zrinski and his 2,000 men didn't just delay an army. They stopped an empire's strategic momentum in its tracks. They saved Vienna, not by defending its walls, but by making its defense possible. In the decades that followed, the Habsburgs would strengthen, the frontier would solidify, and the Ottoman tide in Central Europe would slowly begin to recede. All because of a last stand in a swamp. I think about Siget often, especially when I hear stories of seemingly futile resistance. As an engineer, I'm trained to look for efficiency, for the optimal solution. Siget was the opposite of optimal. It was a catastrophic loss. But as a storyteller, I see the deeper calculation. Zrinski understood that his value wasn't in victory, but in time. He traded his life and the lives of his men for the most precious commodity in war and in life, a delay. He bought Europe a month, and sometimes a month is all you need. It makes me wonder about the flashpoints in our own lives. The moments of pressure where standing our ground, even if we know we'll lose, can change the trajectory of everything that comes after. It's not about winning the battle. It's about changing the clock. The siege of Siget faded from popular memory in the West, overshadowed by later battles. But in Croatia and Hungary, Zrinski is a national hero. And in the grand narrative, his sacrifice ensured that the cultural and political map of Europe looked fundamentally different. One stubborn man in a forgotten fortress, who chose to fire a cannon instead of taking a deal, arguably shaped the future of a continent. Thanks for listening to this episode of Flashpoints. If you found this story of sacrifice and consequence compelling, please share the show with a friend. It truly helps us grow. This has been Ibnul J. Farabi, and Flashpoints is a production of Light Knot Studios. You can find more of our narrative history documentaries and a lot more at lightknotstudios.com. Until next time, take care.